Hello, I'm Amanda Fajak, Executive Director at Walking the Talk, and I'm delighted to have here with me in the UK, Mina Ames, who is a Managing Partner for Global Financial Services at ZRG. Welcome, Mina.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Fantastic. So today we're here to dive a bit deeper on some findings from our white paper on managing culture in a hybrid world. And what's really important, what we discovered in that report is that there are some key systems that are critical to really get right in the hybrid environment. And two of those are recruitment and onboarding, which Mina is an expert. So a few questions for you, Mina, just to really kind of delve in underneath this. So over the past 18 months, there's been a lot of talk about recruitment over Zoom and on Teams environment. And as we're starting to transition back into the workplace and operate in a hybrid environment, what are some of the key themes that you're seeing emerge across the search landscape?
That's a really good question, Amanda. And I would say there are four key themes that I would like to touch on briefly. Firstly, the Great Resignation, diversity, equity and inclusion, sustainability, and ongoing disruption. With the Great Resignation, there's a growing trend of employees voluntarily leaving their jobs looking for something different. According to the McKinsey study, which I know many people have read, there is an additional 40% of employees saying they are likely to leave in the next 3 to 6 months. And more concerningly, 64% of employees consider leaving and they don't necessarily have another job to go to. But if we dig a little deeper, 54% are leaving because they don't feel valued by their managers, while 51% leave because they don't feel a sense of belonging at work. So culture is starting to play a huge part in employee retention. I think the pandemic has also gone on for such a long time that it's affected people both mentally and physically. So that level of introspection and reflection on life and career is now starting to play itself out. With diversity, equity and inclusion, this has become a critical part of all search activity as we are consistently asked for diverse candidates on every slate. Gender and ethnicity are key priorities. In fact, I don't think that I've completed a search without this as a key criteria in the past 18 months, and I suspect that we will see that continuing into 2022. The third one, sustainability, the rise of the Chief Sustainability Officer, given all the environmental activism that we are seeing continues. So there's a focus on ESG, impact investing, and now climate change as a whole new category. But finally, and most importantly, which really does impact leadership, is continued disruption and digital acceleration as we move forward. Consumer expectations are changing. So the way that we interact with organizations, the way that we want to be served by organizations has changed. That also means that leaders have to adjust the way that they think about how they're going to think about customer and continue to make their customers the center of their organizations moving forward.
Fantastic. They're great themes, and we see these play out as well in terms of the culture that organisations are trying to build and the environment they're trying to create. What do you think are the opportunities that the hybrid environment creates for employers and employees?
It's been an incredible access to a global talent pool. So we've seen geographical boundaries are no longer prohibitive for certain segments. So to give you an example, I have a client who leveraged platform engineers in Eastern Europe. They were unwilling to move and wanted to stay within their home countries, and they used that to quite effectively just have cheaper labor. But now that very same talent pool that gave them a competitive advantage is being targeted by the larger digital platforms, offering higher compensation and allowing remote working. So again, it's becoming really, really critical to retain your skilled workers as there is a shortage out there. The other piece I would say is hybrid is also allowing us to now move into an environment which I think is going to benefit organisations, because we can now finally meet, as long as all parties are comfortable, the final 1 or 2 candidates. So whether that's a walk in the park, a lunch or a coffee, we are certainly encouraging that with our clients, because we believe it will heighten the success of not just onboarding, but also cultural integration into the new organisation.
And I think that's really interesting, because one of the things, we sort of found as we were doing the report is what's interesting to people is, thinking through, do I want people all together in an office, at any point in time? How remote can we really be? Can we really recruit anywhere in the world? And, so I think it's putting up some fantastic challenges and interesting kind of options for individuals and for organizations to consider. And, onboarding was a very big issue and challenge when we looked at remote working, and how do you kind of make people feel a part of the organization. What are some trends that you're seeing? What are some kind of opportunities through hybrid that you see in terms of onboarding?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And in fact, that's been a real topic of conversation with most of our clients, is how do we do this successfully? And how do we ensure that those people that we have recruited during a Zoom or Teams environment do stay? So a couple of pieces of advice that I would certainly give out there. The most critical piece is that onboarding needs to start way before a candidate starts their first day in your organization. So we would encourage you to create plenty of post-offer touch points to ensure that there's a strong and positive relationship between manager and employee early on. And this is really increasingly important as candidates are still being targeted during gardening leave by other organizations. And what we're seeing, particularly for diverse candidates, is non-starts. And what that means is they're being targeted, and whether that is for extra compensation, more flexibility, a different culture or a different growth trajectory, people are looking at those last-minute offers in a way that we've never seen before. So do stay connected to them. And again, as we move into this hybrid environment, find a way, as long as everybody is comfortable, to meet physically for lunch or a coffee. So that again starts to build that deeper connectivity and relationship before you start in the organization. Get the wider team to get involved in onboarding, so new starters can find their feet and almost their tribe in a new organization, but also cultivate a strong culture and values and ways of working through very clear and transparent communications. So while there's no silver bullet to onboarding in the environment now, there are certain things that you can do to mitigate any risks of organ rejection or a non-fit and non-start.
And I think one of the things we've been talking to a lot of our clients about is the idea that actually be really clear whether you're hiring somebody to challenge the existing culture or whether you're looking for somebody who will fit with the existing culture. And actually they're two different strategies as well when you're onboarding, because sometimes if you're trying to hire somebody to be countercultural, particularly in the hybrid environment, it's being very clear on what that will be and what they might expect and how you want them to operate.
Yeah, and it's really interesting just to touch on that point, Amanda. Often organizations think they want a disruptor in their organization, and we have seen that happen quite extensively again over the last 18 months. But then we've also seen them leave rather rapidly as well, because the culture hasn't been ready for them, or they haven't been set up in the way that they thought they would be. So it's really critical to ensure that you know exactly what you want and how you're integrating them into your organization.
Yeah, and we talk about creating communities of people where you can actually find the people who are going to be countercultural. So your new people, you can bring them in and connect them with those, and that makes a really big difference to that organ rejection piece that you're talking about as well. In the report, we talk about 4 behaviours that you need to succeed in a hybrid world. We talk about empowerment, courage, collaboration, and caring as well. How do you build those into your assessment methodology?
You know, Amanda, I was delighted when I read your report and saw those 4 behaviours, as they really do align well to the way that we are assessing candidates and thinking about candidates as we move forward. And it really goes back to some of the themes that we've discussed today around what It's important about how you retain your employees and what it is that they are running to. So if I can just pick on a couple of those, if I think about, you know, what we would normally do, we'd look at background and experience and motivation, but actually it's a different type of leader and employee that we are looking for right now. So if we think about empathy and caring, when we went into lockdown, every organization and leader displayed an incredible level of care for their employees. Their well-being was the utmost priority. But now it's interesting, as we have emerged out of COVID, we are looking for leaders that are able to maintain that balance of empathy, but also delivery for an organization. But unfortunately, we are seeing some inauthenticity in this precise point, which is leading to the resignation. We're saying we care on one side, but actually we're putting an incredible level of pressure on our employees on another side. So again, as we're assessing, we're actually looking for leaders. How are they adjusting their own leadership style to manage this balance? Courage was another one that I do really like, because we're looking for that evidence of flexibility, adaptability, but most importantly, vulnerability in our leaders and our employees. Part of that is, how open are you to feedback? How open are you to adjusting your own leadership style and actually learning in an environment that is constantly changing? And are you courageous enough to step against the norm and do what is right for the organization, but balance that for what's right for the individual and their personal needs? Empowerment, I mean, that's critical. And again, it goes a little bit back to that onboarding point. You need to develop trust very early with your entire team, your new starters, and as a leader. Micromanaging just doesn't work in this environment because it feels invasive. You're zooming into someone's personal room and you're asking them what they're doing rather than trusting in how they are operating. And then finally, collaboration. I mean, this has always been a critical part of any assessment methodology. But where I think it's slightly different now, or we're almost building upon it, it's about the alignment of purpose, generosity, and holistic thinking. And we've had to adjust our own styles. We have to collaborate in a Zoom environment where you can't bump into somebody in the kitchen or go for a quick bite to eat at lunchtime. You're having to collaborate in a much more thoughtful and consistent way rather than haphazardly. And I think that's really important, again, for people that are open to adjusting their style to this hybrid environment that we find ourselves in. So yes, we're definitely looking at those four, because to the point of your report, if we can assess and get that right, it will help them embed it in culturally as they get into an organization.
Do you find people are attracted to organizations where there's more opportunity for connection and belonging, you know, where they kind of seem to have that balance between caring and results kind of better aligned? I mean, what are you finding in terms of who candidates are attracted to?
It's interesting. I think you've hit the nail on the head. Candidates are looking for something different. And if we go back to the statistics that we were just sharing with McKinsey, there are people leaving without a role to go to. What that says to me is they've reflected on what they don't want, but they're looking for something different. So that sense of purpose and belonging and feeling valued feel like emotive words, but they are absolutely critical. What we're seeing right now is organizations are almost, for want of a better word, throwing money at the problem. Now, that may work for some people, but for compensation is only part of the puzzle. Yeah. Feeling valued and having a sense of, why am I doing this? How does this connect with my personal values? And can I add value into this organization is really, really important. The other thing that I would say is, as an employer, I would encourage you to do exit interviews. And it's really important to understand what it is that you're running away from, but also what it is that you're being attracted to. Where I think there's a real red flag is organizations that are not doing exit interviews, because what they forget is the person who's leaving will tell those that are staying. And what that does is send a message that we don't care. So I'd be very clear about that.
Brilliant. That's a fantastic tip. And, you know, I think it's, you know, what you're making me think of is one of the things we've been talking to a lot of clients about is, you know, we saw companies become incredibly thoughtful around their culture and, you know, how they treated their people during COVID. And they've got to be equally thoughtful as they come out around the messages they send, and kind of that inauthenticity and the risk of that sense of the gap between walk and talk. And I think it is a big risk for a lot of organisations in the coming months to kind of really face. And so as we come to a close, any top tips from you in terms of things for recruiters or employees to be thinking about in this hybrid world?
Yeah, look, I would say, search is both art and science. So we will do what we can as part of that value chain to attract great candidates into your organization. And as much as we will assess and ensure culture fit as best we can, I think it's really, really important that your culture in your organization is fit for purpose in a hybrid environment. How are you thinking about adjusting to this environment? How are you thinking about onboarding new starters and embedding them within the organization? So, it really is an employee market. Employees have the pick of the organizations they want. So right now they are opting out of organizations where the culture doesn't feel right and into organizations where it does feel that it's going to give them that greater sense of being. But the other word of caution that I might add into this tale is employees are feeling empowered. So even if they go to a new organization and they suddenly find it isn't what they were told and it isn't as authentic as they thought it was going to be, they are not staying. We are also seeing, and I'm sure studies will come out next year, those people that have moved to organizations, it isn't what they wanted, and have equally made the decision again to leave. So retaining your top talent is really critical.
Fantastic. So sounds like culture is incredibly important, and as always, getting the walk and the talk completely aligned so people have that authentic experience, both from the conversations they have up front, but what they experience day one when they walk in. Thank you, Mina. Really appreciate our time together. And, as we draw this to a close, just really want to say that operating in a hybrid world continues to throw up challenges and opportunities. And we really look forward to thinking through with you how you can shape your culture and your search to maximise those opportunities.
Thank you, Amanda.